Johnny, welcome to Hometown Heroes.
Thank you.
And
Glad to be here.
you have one of those military occupation specialties that's just not many people can do it. You've got to be in the battle, but then you have a lot of things you have to control as the battle's happening. So uh, your parents were both Air Force active duty. They're both retired, and that's probably inspired you to go into the Air Force, I'm sure.
Well, it definitely motivated me not to go into any other branches of service.
That's good motivation.
Yes.
And so you kind of
Uh-huh.
grew up as an Air Force brat around the world. Did you?
Yeah, I've been a brat all my life. Um, and I just celebrated my first Father's Day this past weekend. I've got a 4-month-old baby, so
Little daughter.
I've got a
Congratulations.
little brat of my own now.
She was born in February, wasn't she?
She almost held out to February, January 28th.
Okay.
Wow.
So your first Father's Day, that's special.
I'll say it's the most special thing in my life.
Absolutely. And then they grow up and, uh, you continue that
And then I'll
relationship
get
whenever.
all that's coming to me whenever she shows up.
That's right. Yes, you will.
But
The
That's right.
grandkids are the best.
that's what I hear.
Yeah,
Hopefully-
grandkids are
hopefully-
absolutely the best.
Hopefully, I'm still about 40 or 50 years out from grandkids. So,
You're not that far.
yes, you mentioned that my parents both served. Yep, my grandparents also both served. So we come from a long line of military family. I'm very proud of that. Even outside of just the military, it's just a long line of service. So it doesn't matter what uniform we're wearing. We're constantly looking for a way to serve. And I'm
Absolutely.
very proud of that. But
And then after you take the uniform off, you're still serving. So
exactly.
see a lot of that in our veterans.
Right. That's one of the difficult things for some transitioning veterans is to just recognize that all you're doing is changing your uniform. You're not changing anything about yourself. You just got to get out there and find a new mission to tackle and serve, and you'll find that self-value and that self-worth and put it to good use, just like you did all those faithful years of service in the military. So, you mentioned. You ran through my bio pretty quick. I could do the same. Dad did 27 years in the Air Force as a crew chief, working on F-4s during Vietnam and F-15s during the Gulf War. And my mom did 20 years as a radio and television broadcaster. So I grew up watching her on TV and hearing her voice on the radio. I was born in the Netherlands. My sister was born in Germany. We lived in Iceland for a short while. Good thing we're not there right now. It's a lot of... pretty crazy there right now.
Yeah.
But I graduated high school, went straight to college, got an engineering degree. And when I got the diploma, I knew that this piece of paper makes my parents proud, but I needed to go out and find out what was going to make myself proud. And I knew that it was the military. And I found the career field of combat control in the Air Force to put me right in the line of duty to be able to make the most positive impact and change on the battlefield.
So whenever you went in the Air Force, is that what you were going to do? I mean, you signed up right then to be a combat controller?
So actually, I signed up to be combat control. I came home and told my mom all about it. And then I went back to the recruiter and changed my AFSC to something a little safer than combat control and something that's more, more applicable to the business world. Explosive ordnance disposal,
Oh, EOD.
really easy to put on a resume and get a good suit and tie job later on in life. But I was sold the shtick of, you're going to work on the president's detail and you're going to be going into 5-star hotels and doing bomb sweeps ahead of their travels. So he sold me a bill of goods and I took it all the way through basic training. And I started EOD tech school. And they have a 1-week long kind of in-doc course before they send you to their actual tech school. and I failed. Actually, I didn't make it past their indoctrination course.
You didn't detonate a bomb or anything.
No, luckily nothing blew up. No, that's next chapter. But in the Air Force at the time, that's a volunteer career field. I had the option of volunteering for another career field. So I said I wanted to be combat control, and they laughed at me because that's effectively like trying out for JV, not making it, and then saying, all right, well, I'll just go knock on the varsity door and walk on there. But that's exactly what I did. It was a different mindset, different ethos, different cut from a different cloth in combat control. And I found my home there and excelled at that. Started that pipeline of schools that lasted over 2 years of attrition. At the time, we had probably about an 85% attrition process. So we started with 36 guys in our pipeline and only graduated 4 at the end of the 2-year-long process. But I loved it as the coolest job on the planet. And I'm proud to be able to have served in that capacity.
And there's a lot of stuff you have to do. It's not just learning how to use a radio or anything. I mean, you've got to be able to swim and skydive, not just a static jump, but, skydive where you control the parachute and learn to fight the battles too, because you're going to be embedded with the special ops guys.
Right. So Air Force special operations would be pararescue men that work on extraction and rescue and medical, and combat controllers, which focus primarily on dropping ordnance on nouns, people, places, and things, as well as applying air traffic control in joint arena. So you're attached to a Navy SEAL or Army Special Forces team, and you're running and gunning with a team. At the same time, you've got a radio on your back, and you're communicating the ground scheme of maneuver to the aircraft overhead, which you are in control of, their altitudes and their attack headings, the munitions that they're choosing and dropping, and doing so all in between mag changes on the battlefield. So there's a lot going on. It's an incredible opportunity, again, to have been able to be a combat controller. There's not many out there.
A great honor to be able to hit that goal and become one. We talked earlier before the show about one of the great combat controllers I know, and that's Jack Fannin. Mary knows him. He's come to roll call, and he was a running and gunning guy, and he still is as a quadriplegic. So
Jack Fanning is and will always be a brother to me, almost to his detriment, maybe sooner than we were supposed to be. So Jack was one of my cadre at Combat Control School. And the final event that we do before we get handed our berets is the 15-mile ruck march. It's at the end of being in the field for a week or 2 weeks of fun. And for us, it was in June in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, which has got a new fun name now, but that's all right, Fort Bragg. So it's real comfortable times, arduous task. And at the end of that 15-miler, I came in second in our team. Of course, I had to get passed at the end by our team leader. The only officer on the team passed me at the end, but lead from the front. But Jack Fanning was there, and as soon as I crossed the line, he gave me the biggest hug, which just shattered all expectations and norms of the cadre and cadet relationship. So it was an immediate brotherhood to be a part of. Incredible to be able to join him in that career field. So not long after I graduated, more on Jack Fanning, he carried on. Again, he was an instructor. He carried on to go to a tier 1 Q course. And as you mentioned, he unfortunately suffered a nighttime skydiving incident that left him paralyzed, and miraculously he survived. And he like we talked about in the beginning, has continued his commitment to service, wears a very different uniform today. But even though he's in a mobile chair and a quadriplegic for the rest of his life, he has done incredible things for our fellow brothers and sisters in arms.
He sure has. And to see him operate, you know, he puts that pin or that stick in his mouth and does his iPad or phone and makes reservations for airlines and everything else and sets up all the Brother Keeper events. So he's really one that serves a lot of the wounded warriors and first responders too. So.
Yes, sir.
And then years later, your paths cross again because you moved to the Metroplex and Jack's there. So,
right. So I'm not sure if I was deployed when Jack was injured, but, you know, time passes for the pipeline. I graduate, I get my beret, I go to more training, and then I go on my first deployment to Afghanistan in 2010. And I would say my deployment was pretty tame. What it did, though, was brought the battlefield home for my parents, because two of my best friends that they actually knew, Danny Sanchez and Mark Forrester, were killed within 13 days of one another. And they went to their funerals back at the States in my stead. When I came back from that first deployment, I got to catch up with the families, Gold Star families. The year before, I actually went to Thanksgiving with Mark in Haleyville, Alabama, his hometown. And that's a tradition that I carried on for the next 11 years. I spent every Thanksgiving with his Gold Star family, and proud to say that I'm definitely a Forester as well. So after 6 months being back home, I would redeploy to Afghanistan. This time was going to be the fun deployment, being attached to an Army Special Forces team. And I was deployed to Eastern Afghanistan, Paktika province. Our job was village stability operations. Our job was to train, equip, and handle all logistics for the Afghan local police officers, which sounds like a serious title. But you could see from some of the photos you can see online on my website that these were, an Afghan local police officer could be a 12-year-old boy that we've given a uniform. Luckily, that photo is not a 12-year-old boy. Aha, there you go. Well played, well played. That's a 14-year-old to my right and a 16-year-old to my left. The 16-year-old was awesome because he spoke English. Had an older brother from Pakistan that taught him English. The 14-year-old had received some shrapnel from getting attacked the night prior. So we were up on this mountain providing support the next day for them. And I believe this is the 4th of July in 2011. And so within the next 3 days, on the 7th of July, we're doing what we do. We're responding to incidents, driving around Afghanistan in a 3-vehicle convoy. And as you can see, oh man, this is perfect timing with the photos. Just keep it up. So these large MATV vehicles, which are mine-resistant anti-tank vehicles, I would be standing up in the back of it because if you go to the last photo, I've got 2 radios on my chest to speak to interteam and some aircraft, as well as a big radio on my back to speak to higher headquarters and satellites. So I need to be in the back of the truck so that I can keep everything that's syncing with satellites up to date, because my number one role on this team is to provide close air support in an instant as soon as we should take enemy contact. So I'm never just lounging in the back, taking it easy. I'm constantly proactive and looking at possible points of origin of, bad guy sites, that places where they could take up defensive positions, places where they could launch an attack. And I'm noting those coordinates so that if we should take contact, I can quickly put my head down, take cover, but then relay those coordinates to pilots that would be flying in overhead. So we started to pick up inter-team communications of the enemy and started to DF or direction find their location. And we came to a dried riverbed or a wadi that was probably about 15 meters wide. So this large vehicle would go through it. The lead vehicle went through and up and sat on the other side, set up a defensive position, and our vehicle started to traverse it. And as we started to come up and out the other side, I was holding on to the top of the turret. And that's when the IED, improvised explosive device, detonated beneath the rear axle of the vehicle, disabling it. And when I opened my eyes, I could see nothing but orange haze. I could smell and taste the chemical noxious smells of the diesel fuel, as well as the HME or homemade explosive that had just detonated. And when I sat up and looked down, I could see that my interpreter was unconscious in the floorboard, and I could see both of my feet looking back up at me. So if you could imagine doing a pike off of a third-story building, maybe just landing straight up on your legs, that's basically what happened to my tib, fib, calcaneus, my talus. All those bones were kind of just turned to dust and inverted. But I was very fortunate actually to be standing. If I were seated, all of that damage probably would have went through my pelvis and I would be paralyzed or not here with us today. So it was a good thing I had those soft chicken legs to absorb a lot of that blast energy. It was a good strategy I had played out for my life up until that point. So that would start a long process, to get us to today, but a little shorter process of getting me medevaced. We had a medevac aircraft that showed up about an hour later. Within an hour, me and Enzo, my interpreter, were dropped off for our first surgeries in Sharana Air Base. And then overnight, we were flown to Bagram Air Base for more surgeries. And then this is us landing in Landstuhl, Germany. 4 days I'd spent in Landstuhl getting wounds cleaned up. And then this photo here is me finally arriving to Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, where I would be checked into BAMC and spend the next 3 months as an inpatient. And by the time I was discharged as an inpatient, I had had about 20 surgeries on both of my legs in order to keep them in a process known as limb-salvage. So the medical community, nobody likes war, but the medical community exceeds all potential in times of war because they get so many iterations of very similar casualties that they get to figure out new ways of dealing with them. So instead of amputating my legs in the field, again, I embarked on a journey known as limb salvage. And to date, as early as last Wednesday, I've had 34 surgeries on both of my legs to keep them. I say that I've had 34 surgeries to replace a K with a G because I don't have ankles anymore. I have angles. So my feet are fused at a 90-degree angle. I wear leg braces for the rest of my life. But I do my best to stay fit. And most people would never assume that anything was wrong if I was wearing pants. So
whenever that did happen, you put tourniquets on both your legs, didn't you?
Correct. Yes. They put the first tourniquet on. I heard my medic whisper to the other medic that it wasn't stopping. So I sat up real fast and said, put another tourniquet on. He handed it to me. So I put that one on, and then I put the other one on my right leg as well. So I had 3 tourniquets. Yeah. And they did a decent job. I'm still here today, but I did flatline by the time I made it to Sharana Air Base, which is of no consequence to me. I mean, I was just having a snooze at the time. Which, by the way,
You were taking a long overdue nap.
I was finally getting that long overdue rest. And I was, people say, oh my gosh, were you unconscious, so you don't remember any of that? No, I was conscious and proud to have been conscious for every single bit of the incident, all the way up until they pushed me back for my first x-ray, where they take a full body scan to make sure there's nothing wrong with your spine. I was coherent and speaking the whole time, probably still barking orders incoherently, I'm sure, but it all made sense to me. No one was moving fast enough, of course. And the last thing that I remember, as my eyesight was no longer working, was the nurse leaning down as they're pushing me back and saying, "Think a good dream and dream that dream." And the last thing I thought was, what the F? And then I was out, passed out. So that was the last thing that, should I had passed, that would have went through my mind. So you should really cherish every moment and recognize that at any point it could be your last. So choose some powerful words. Think a good dream and dream that dream.
Now, whenever you were at BAMC at Brook, you were with other guys that were wounded too. So you kind of had a brotherhood there as
Absolutely.
you were going through different surgeries and seeing guys just come in, and then the guys that have gone through the surgery and the PT to see how they have progressed too.
So 2011, when I was injured, was boomtown in Afghanistan. And again, the medical community is loving it because they're learning so much. And the rehab community that I was then in for the next 2 years, we benefited because, like you said, we just had this incredible community of similar stories. And how could I hang my head when a guy that's younger than me is showing up a triple amputee? He's 19 years old. He hasn't even spent his sign-on bonus to the military. His life is forever changed, and he's learning how to balance on a Bosu ball, falling off and cracking up, just having the best time. And he's getting razzed on by fellow amputees and fellow wounded warriors, and the rehab therapists are just keeping the mood so light and positive. It was truly a remarkable time to be going through what could have been the worst possible time of all of our lives. The one thing that I will say, and something that I was very cognizant of, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and that was, rehab is synonymous with pain, right? If you want to progress, you're going to have to go through some pain. Well, there's a solution for that, right? We have drugs that we can give you to numb some of the pain. And if you take the drugs, you can excel and do more and recover faster. So a lot of people struggled with that, balancing those two things, right? I need to get better, but I have these drugs that are so readily available. How do I balance the two? Unfortunately, so many of those guys struggled with that, took those struggles with them in life. And too many of the guys that I looked up to have since been those that now were covering down on their families because they decided to make the worst possible decision.
Mm.
But I, like I said, was always of the mindset that I didn't want to take the drugs and not feel the progress. I always wanted to feel myself getting better. So if I could feel the pain and then feel less pain, then that was the progress that motivated me not to take the drugs. So, I would encourage other people to try and look at things that way, to try to come out of that drug induced fog as quickly as possible, because God is good, and you don't. I mean, he'll find a way for you to heal. You got to get some sleep, hydrate, don't smoke, stop drinking, and come off of that medication, and you will heal quicker than you can imagine.
Because most of those medications are highly addictive. And then
Yes.
we have all these service people that come out and they can't cope because
Right.
they're addicted, and they spend the rest of their life struggling with that addiction. So,
Right. Only compounded
or they decide that they don't want to struggle anymore, and then they take their own lives, and they're part of that 22 a day. And so I think, Johnny, you make such a great point, because even if you haven't been injured in war, we all, especially as we get older, we deal with pain, and it's how you choose to deal with that pain, and when you're taking the medication, all you're doing is masking the pain. The pain is still going to be there when you come off that medication. So, I kind of go down the same road as you. Is I would rather deal with and feel that pain and know my body well enough to know what is right, what is wrong, and everything else, and deal with that than to take that potential, to Rick's point, how addictive those pain medications are. And we see the aftermath of that on the street corners and everywhere where you see the homeless veterans that, we can't get them help, and, or they don't want help. One of the two things is happening. And so every time you stop at a corner, it seems like anymore, there's a homeless vet on the corner. How did they get there? Chances are it's what you're talking about.
Right.
Because the pain's not just always physical, but a lot of times it's psychological and the post-traumatic stress. So then they start covering that up by taking the drugs, and then they get more drugs for.
Right. So the drugs are comparatively more difficult to attain than the worst drug plaguing our society and called a norm. And that's alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And I wish that it wasn't so normal that alcohol is coursing through 90% of our blood every single day. I personally, again, don't partake. I haven't had a drop of alcohol since that was at Halo School. That was 2008. So however many years that's been, I haven't had a drop of alcohol. And it just mental clarity, I don't think that people remember what that was like because they establish a new norm of always having some form of, depressant in their system. So, if I could, just rally people around the idea of coming off of medication, tapering off of drinking alcohol, and recognizing that this life is so short and precious and worthwhile of paying attention, and being of clear mind, then I think that we would finally start to chip away at that 22 a day that you mentioned.
And you were certainly blessed because you were able to get immediate help. And, it was just a decision real soon after that happened. Do we let him keep his legs or do we amputate? Because they could have easily amputated and just said, hey, we're sorry. But it had this been 55 years ago or so in Vietnam. If you got the helicopter there, you would have been an amputee, a double amputee for sure. So
I was classified a double amputee in the field. And they just kind of maintain in place with external fixation all your stuff, keep it clean until you get home, until they make a more educated decision. And the surgeon that was at the foot of my bed on July 13th, 2011, his name is Dr. Shoe, which is kind of a pun, because I didn't wear shoes for years after that. But he is the same surgeon who now has a private practice in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is where my wife and child and I flew last week for, again, my 34th surgery. And not everybody has that story, that I can fly to see my surgeon. I can drive to his house and have dinner with him and his family the night before we have surgery, and then I can fly home. So people have always asked, why did you keep having so many surgeries? And that's because of the fact that every time I did, it got better, right? If I was on a different trajectory, then I would make an elective decision to amputate, which is what so many people in the limb salvage process end up doing. But my story has been one of success. It's also very rare to have 2 complete hindfoot fusions and have the IDEO braces on both legs, but it's working for me. And
to be able to walk and do all the things, run and climb and ruck and do all the things you do. One of our listeners is Ann Pottinger. And Ann and I are on the board of Freedom Mobility Foundation. Her husband's Major General Kevin Pottinger. And we do a lot of things, provide a lot of equipment and vehicles for people with mobility issues. And she just asked if there's anything that we can do to help you in having better mobility. I mean, we have those Solar Rider golf carts that we give to individuals, ATVs, cars, if you needed something like that, or trucks.
What a crazy thing to be put on the spot for. Is there anything that we can give you?
Yeah.
Let me know right now.
No, that's something to think about, but you can just let us know, because you're the kind of person that we really love to help to make your recovery and your life a lot better. So
I'll talk to that piece as well. Other veterans that'll hear this message. So I said I flew to Charlotte. I got to fly to Charlotte with an organization called Veteran Airlift Command. They fly wounded warriors and their families to medical procedures or military ceremonies. They connect the dots for these guys and gals all over the country for free, and they do so with private aircraft. So we fly private. Don't have to worry about going through TSA and taking my leg braces off and getting strip searched in public. Yeah. And, that's very simple for guys that are in a wheelchair, guys with prosthetics. That's a huge deal. And what I wanted to mention is the stigma. The military, we're chock full of stigmas, right? We got the stigma where we don't want to get our due support from the VA. So you don't go and fight for more percentages that you're actually due at the VA. That's one thing you need to work on. Another one of them is just raising your hand and admitting that you have a problem and asking for help and reaching out to these organizations that have thought ad nauseum about how they can best support us. And all we have to do is reach out and ask for the support. And there's someone out there that would love to help you. Obviously, there are outliers of people that are trying to take advantage. But for the most part, if you wore the cloth of this great nation, you're not a punk that is going to get turned away or is going to be seen as someone that's just trying to take advantage of an organization. Speaking for Veteran Airlift Command, as soon as there's a request, these pilots are jumping all over these opportunities like ducks in a pond going after a loaf of bread because of the time that they spend in the cockpit with these veterans. We're up there just sharing stories for the duration of the flight, 3 hours, that they get that perspective on the battlefield that they would have otherwise never had if they didn't put themselves in a position to serve in such a unique capacity. So I appreciate you bringing up this mobility.
Freedom Mobility Foundation.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's 40,000 great veteran-centric nonprofits out there, and there's too many veterans that are just unwilling to ask.
And I think one of the reasons is because we're used to giving,
right?
And we aren't used to receiving. And just in my wife and I are both veterans, and we're used to giving, but a family blessed us, and it was difficult to be on the receiving side of a blessing. But if you don't do that, then you're hampering those people from getting the blessing of helping you. So you've got to be able to learn to graciously accept things that people and organizations want to do for you. So
here's a simpler example and another personal one. I was just married in December of 2022, and I've lived in my home for many years. I have plenty of hand towels and plenty of sheets and plenty of things in the house that work just fine. But for a wedding, you need to do a wedding registry. So I had to get it through my head that, no, we don't need anything. I don't know. What are we going to put on a wedding registry? Well, we had to put something on there because there are hundreds of people that want to do something. So we better at least give them a general direction for how to support us best.
Yeah, or no telling what you'll get.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. You'll get something you don't want. But you make such a great point, because there are, and that's one thing that Rick and I talk about a lot here, just in the DFW area. There are so many ways for veterans in this area, especially, to get help with people that they can come face to face with any day of the week, because we have so many great organizations here that just want to do things to help veterans. But we as veterans, to your point, we don't feel like it's okay to ask, but it's there,
right.
It is such a small percentage of people that take advantage of any system in this country. And that's human behavior. But for the most part, when a veteran comes asking for help, they truly legitimately need that help. But there's a lot of veterans out there that aren't asking for help. So if people out there listening, watching, know of a veteran that needs help but won't ask for it, then reach out on their behalf. Because we
so
can
much of it.
Right. We can go around them and get to them and see what we can do to help them and encourage them to accept the help. And the only response they need is just thank you. And take that gift and understand that people want to give you that gift. They want to do it. Yep. Rick, you're muted.
Oh, I was like,
yeah, I do that whenever I drink my coffee, because I set the cup down and the microphone I have picks it up. But there's so many, like you said, Johnny, so many organizations out there willing to help. Back to your recovery, that was a long process, but then what happened here?
So this represents the week, actually the day before I was medically retired in 2013. So this would be maybe September of 2013. And this would be 2 years after being wounded. Again, at this point, I'd probably had about 24 surgeries on both of my legs. And I told my unit that I wanted to do a Finney jump. So I wanted to jump out of a plane one more time. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, let's find out how we do that. This was also in the middle of the military sequester, where no aircraft were flying. There was no fuel. There were shortages. Everything was red tape. So it went all the way up to the Pentagon to get clearance for this this freshly patched up Humpty Dumpty to jump out of a plane. So the only caveat that they made was that I had to do a hey-ho into the water, right? So I didn't have to land on the ground and risk messing up my legs. So went through a whole process. We got in the wind tunnel, made sure I could fly, got in the pool, made sure I was safe in there. And then I got to choose the guys that I surrounded myself with, about 10 of my best friends, to go out on a sunny day in Destin, Florida, and do one last jump. And it was freaking awesome. Luckily, it was incident free. And, like a year later, the Air Force recruiting used this video as one of those videos where it's like, we need people that can do this, right? And it shows me skydiving. But anybody that skydives knows, looking at that video, that is not what we want people to do, because that is not good positioning. I turned whenever I pulled to open my parachute. Like, it looks cool to someone that doesn't know, but to someone that does, it's like, that was almost unsafe. But luckily, nothing happened that day. It was incredible. One really cool moment about getting out of the water. So I landed in the Sound in Destin, circled up boats. The boat pulled up to me, and the colonel that reached his hand in the water to pull me back onto the boat was the same colonel that was there right after Jack Fanning gave me that hug after combat control school. He gave our commencement speech at combat control school, where we were actually donning our berets for the first time. So he was the one that handed me my beret. And 4 years later, right before getting medically retired and doing my last act of service here, he was the one that was pulling me out of the water, giving me that last handshake in the military. So
what a great brotherhood.
Yes. And that was, at the time, Colonel Buller. And yeah, incredible man.
And then this is a year or two before 2011, isn't it? Whenever you received a Bronze Star, Purple Heart.
Yes, sir. So this is, call this man my godfather. This is Colonel Chris Larkin, now retired. And he was my commander at the time. So he was there in Afghanistan when I was wounded. Again, I was only in country in Afghanistan for 10 days. I was on my team for 7. So it was a quick trip. So I had just gotten to Afghanistan, and 10 days later I was being medevaced home. But this is about 1 year after my injury, and my goal was to walk and wear my uniform. So I walked in my first pair of Ideos to receive my Combat Action Medal and Bronze Star from my commander in front of my family and friends here. And the special cherry on top was Colonel Larkin reached into his blues pocket and handed me an MRE bag with a rubber band tied onto it, and it just had my initials YK on it. And he said, and here, most importantly, is what you left in Afghanistan. It was my talus from my right foot that had been ejected from my leg into the truck bed, and my team picked it up, put it in an MRE bag, and sent it home with me, or sent it home with my stuff. So my commander, when he presented me that, gave me that. Luckily, it had been taken by a PJ, and he had bleached it. I mean, it's not active. So. But he was like, take this nasty thing off of me. And now I have it in my office.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely a different breed.
Absolutely.
Not normal. I don't think none of us that join the military, especially in a time where you can volunteer to do it, none of us are normal. And we're proud of that. And, I chose to be in the midst of some really, really crazy outlier, not normal guys.
And then after you got injured, and became a wounded warrior, then you saw the side that we were talking about, where all the organizations are out there to help you. And one of the organizations was President Bush and his organization.
Right.
Tell us about this.
So I think it was maybe 2017. We get an email that asks us permission, basically, for the president to use our likeness. And then we have zero other information. So I could be wrong on the year, but I think in 2018 is when it came out that he had spent the time. He did it in 1 year, painting about 100 of us wounded warriors that he had gotten to know throughout the years, either from his Warrior 100 bike rides, where he rides mountain bikes with wounded service members at his ranch in Crawford, Texas, or those of us that played in the Warrior Open, which is a golf tournament for wounded warriors that happened in Dallas, Texas, over the course of, I believe, about 8 years that we did it. I got to play in 3 of those tournaments. And yeah, as you can see, I was one of the guys that was featured in his book. I was in actually the panel of images you see behind us in that picture is represented as the centerfold in the Porches of Courage book. And, so I like to say that I made the centerfold.
Oh, that's a great honor and a great story.
It was really cool to, from that changes people's lives, right? I got put on Fox News. I was on Mornings with Maria. And then that right there was one of the coolest things I've ever done, getting the chance to sit with the president and answer questions and speak and be able to thank him personally in a public forum for what he's done for us and for all of us and our families, doing just that, changing the trajectory for all of us. He is intentionally covering down on those that he personally sent to the battlefield, and he owns that. And he, he'll never leave us behind. He's an incredible commander. I remember when I was teeing off on one of those rounds of golf, he loves to talk trash, right? He loves to try to get under your skin. So he was standing on the tee box right before I hit, and he said, what did he say? He said, don't choke. You got your commander in chief right behind you. And I said, sir, you've been behind us the whole way. And then I hit a perfect shot. Nice little draw over the trees. But he's an awesome man. When people ask about him on a personal level, I'll tell him that he's like your favorite uncle. And his two greatest attributes are his humility and his punctuality. He's the most humble president or person because he just diffuses any tension in the room every time he walks in. If he has a personal conversation with you and it's happened in the past, he will remember you. He'll remember your name. He'll remember what you talked about. And he'll ask how your sister is doing. And you're like, what in the world? Does he have like a chip in his ear and someone's feeding him? But he literally cares. He's the most present person, one of the most present people I've ever met. And then his punctuality. When it is time to go, he gone. So he doesn't make people wait on him. He's where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. So he is one of the most intentional people that I've ever met. And I think that speaks highly of why he was one of, a great president.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Now you're really giving back because you're on the stage, speaking to groups and helping others kind of understand the things that veterans go through, the physical and the mental and psychological part. So tell us what you're doing now.
So ever since being wounded, right, I definitely didn't seek out being a public speaker. It kind of found me. I think that's kind of the same for a lot of people. And even as soon as I was laid up at BAMC, my hospital room was constantly a stage. I mean, there was constantly an audience in front of me. So I'm telling my story over and over and realizing more and more so that even though these are generals and chief master sergeants of the Air Force, these are people that without these antidotes from the battlefield yesterday, they're not going to know. And then if they don't know, they can't better lead the people that are coming behind me. So I loved being able to share that perspective, and then started to get requested to come to civilian organizations, businesses, churches. I like speaking at schools. Ever since I've lived here in the Metroplex, I speak at the closest elementary school. Every Veterans Day, I show up and I'm Sergeant Johnny. So kids will call me out at the grocery store. It's a bit awkward sometimes because some of their parents don't know who I am, and these 10-year-olds know who I am. Anyways, it's an incredible opportunity to be able to get out there and to confidently speak and share my testimony, speak about overcoming adversity, talk about teamwork, what it takes to operate on a special operations team of individuals where you know that everybody's got your back, and then to overlay that and show all of the synergies into civilian life and civilian business world. The military is just one of the best businesses in the world. We do things intentionally. We do so much repetition. We crawl, walk, run. We expect a lot of each other, and we can count on each other. And when you apply those same things to the business world, you find greater success. And there's just a lot to be said about sharing a story of adversity, talking about getting blown up and all of that. But that part just doesn't matter, right? Because my mechanism of injury is severe. But Mary, as you mentioned, we're all going to go through some sort of pain in our life, right? It could be the loss of a loved one that throws you on a stretcher in Afghanistan and you have to be medevaced, right? And your life is forever changed. It could be the loss of a child. It could be a car accident yourself where you're left in a wheelchair. Every single one of us, if it hasn't happened, is going to go through some serious adversity in our lives. And we have to be intentional about the people that we choose to surround ourselves with, because those are the ones that are going to be there to support us whenever we do fall. So that's really the message that I love to share. And I get there by talking about some of my exploits in the military, but really bringing it full circle to the fact that I'm just like everybody else. I'm not a Superman. I saw doing my job no differently than you should see doing your job. We wear different uniforms, but we're all serving the same team, right? We're just there trying to support the people that we love, right? And if you're working in the business world, you're there enduring the situation you're in, right? Your coworkers and your emails, and you're enduring all this stuff, and you're trying to do the best you can so that you can support the people you love there at home, right? It's no different than being on the battlefield.
And people can get a hold of you at your website at JohnnieYellock.com.
Clever name.
And also, Mary is the president of Roll Call. We have a monthly veterans luncheon. Have about 500 veterans show up every month. And she's going to, for sure, give you an invitation to come and talk to our veterans, because
how's September 27th look on your calendar?
Let me check it out.
She's gonna pin you down right now.
Well, that we're a small nonprofit, Johnny, and I've heard your name before, and I don't know if you've heard a Roll Call,
yeah.
But our mission really is to just honor and serve veterans. So, we don't go out looking for big budget speakers, but every now and then, because we don't have a budget for speakers, but every now and then, we run into people like Dave Reaver, and I'm sure you know who he is. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of those folks in this area, right? Shiloh Harris, and Shiloh's going to come to lunch. He's not speaking this month, but he's going to come to lunch this month. But it's like we want to bring folks in that can touch people in a way. Usually it's one of our vets that will tell their story. And then occasionally we get the benefit of bringing in somebody else that shares their story that they maybe never heard before, like somebody like you that can touch those Vietnam, because our biggest group is Vietnam. And those guys, some of them are carrying physical, because of course we all know all the physical stuff that they went through. But a lot of them are still carrying a lot of the PTSD and a lot of the aftermath of coming home to what they came home to, because your parents, obviously you have a long legacy in your family of military. So you understand what they're dealing with. Right. But it is so good sometimes for them to hear. They love to hear about the younger people and what you guys have experienced, because then they compare it to what they experienced. But then they also love to hear, how did you overcome what you overcame, and dealt with it? And maybe you might have one little nugget of something that you say that one of those guys, I think about one in particular who every now and then I run into him somewhere else and I have to say, I haven't seen you at a lunch lately. And he'll tell me about stuff going on and how he's depressed and all this stuff happening. And then he'll come to another lunch or two. And he'll seem like he's coming out of it. Then I run into him again after I haven't seen him for a couple months. And again, I'm like, where are you? Because to me, he feels like one of those people that's right there, Vietnam guy, right there on that fence, just teetering, right? He's teetering and he could go either way any day of the week. And that's the people that I think sometimes we have to find a way to reach them and to touch them, and that they know that, no, to your point, no matter what uniform, and he didn't wear an Air Force uniform, but he wore one of the other branches.
Hey, I got nothing against the other branches.
I don't either. And I love to pick on them.
I wasn't going to choose another branch.
That's
I didn't say I don't have to say. I was a special operator, so we're all fighting the same fight.
That's right. But we love to razz each other. Just
Absolutely.
know from outside. If you didn't wear the uniform, you don't get to razz us.
Right.
That's right.
I get called chair force and all the other things all the time. I hear it. But yeah,
I love when people have no clue what combat control is and tell me that I was in the chair force. I was like, yes, proud to have been.
Yeah, that's the one job my husband always wishes that he could have done in the Air Force. He said, man, I wish I was one of those guys. He was an avionics guy, and when he heard about that particular job, he was like, man, that's a job I wish I'd have done.
It is crazy. It's so crazy, but not while you're doing it. While you're doing it, like I said earlier, it just feels like showing up to do your job and trying to do it well. But as soon as I was wounded, it was immediate that I was looking back at my best friends still deployed, still operating, still training, still jumping, diving, blowing stuff up. Like, y'all are freaking nuts. Y'all are crazy people. I hope you're videoing everything you're doing, because you need to show your kids how crazy it is, because they ain't going to believe you. Right. I wish that I was in when, 4K GoPro was more prevalent. I didn't wear a GoPro. I don't have all this cool guy footage, but I got enough of it. But
yeah,
it is an incredible career field. And, at this time we need volunteers. We need volunteers more than ever.
Absolutely.
We're at a tumultuous time in our union. So we need incredible parents to continue to churn out incredible servants that are willing to go out there and wear any uniform for this country. We need it more than ever.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Well, Johnny, our time's up for today. We certainly want to have you back, and certainly want you to consider speaking at roll call. You're a great guy, a great motivator, and a great American. And you've got a few guys that didn't make it, and let's just talk about them for a second.
Yeah, so I'm standing, so you can actually see them up there. But right now I'm sitting in my wheelchair. But I wear the memorial bracelet on my wrist, and I have their portraits that are hanging above my flag there. But I've got a long list of names, right? We just had Memorial Day weekend a couple weeks ago, and when I spoke to a crowd, I told them that it was a carry the load event. And it's unique because not many people, again, we're 1% that go and serve, even smaller percentage of people that know somebody that, or a smaller percent that actually fought in combat and then perished in combat. But a very small amount of people actually can speak the name of somebody that paid the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And at events like that, they're very unique because every single person that's there can tell you at least one person that they knew personally that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And it's important, especially because of programs such as Roll Call, that's why it exists, to speak the names of these people and ensure they never die their second death where we fail to remember them. So Danny Sanchez, Mark Forrester, Matthew Rowland, Forrest Sibley, I can list a lot of names. Aaron Greider, Jared Van Alst, lots of names. They just keep coming. And those are people that I served with directly. I can remember their faces, and I can still see on Facebook their families that are living on in the wake that they created. And for the most part, every single one of those families is now doing something, not to grieve, but to give back.
That's a good thing to do, because it helps them as they give back to help not only themselves but others know about their children, know about their husbands and spouses, and help those other Gold Star families. So
absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak them.
Always remember those fellas. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Johnny. And we hope to see you again very, very soon.
It sounds like you just may.
Yeah, you're always welcome. Whether you even just come to a lunch, you speak, whatever, you're always welcome.
Awesome. Good to meet you, Mary, and thank you for what you do. And thank you, Rick, for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you. Tell your parents hi.
I will.
Okay. Goodbye. Well, another incredible guy.
Amazing people we meet every day that are just, everyday Americans that wanted to do more, that felt the calling. And, that's the thing, is it really is a calling to join the military. And it's 1%. And young people today are having a hard time even qualifying to come in for a lot of different physical and mental reasons. They're struggling. And, I would just encourage people that are influencing, and I think Johnny said it well, is, it really, we can't speak to the young people, but we surely, and we do in some cases, but not like a parent or an aunt and uncle, a close person, somebody in their life that's close to them, that there are young people out there today that just need to be encouraged and told why military service is a good option.
And then they see
It was a good option for me at 18. It was a good option for you. You know, a lot of us, when we graduated from college or from high school, we said, you know, I feel called. That's the only thing I can consider it, is it's just a calling. You feel called to do it.
Absolutely. See guys like that, and they get that opportunity to go into the schools and tell those children, and like they said, you know, the kids remember them. So
right.
Thank you so much, Johnnie, for being on today and for the incredible life that you're living, having gone through all that you've been through. Roll call's coming up next week. And
it is next Friday.
Liberty Phillips, and she's going to bring some of her ambassadors from Bridge to History. And so that'll be good. She's just freshly back from the 80th anniversary of Normandy. I think she got to jump 3 times. Her sister Faith jumped a couple of times with her. So she's an incredible young woman, an incredible family that honors our veterans and our military. So probably not any tickets left for that event, is there?
It was, you know, it was full in 3 days, you know, and one of the things that I think I'm going to potentially propose that we do is wait till we get a little bit closer to the lunch to even open the RSVP line, because then we get so many people that then we open it early and then it fills up fast, but then we get a bunch of cancellations. So I've already started a wait list, but I know that there's going to be people that have appointments that come up that they make this week. There's going to be people that have funerals that come up that they'll find out about this week. So this week tends to be the week that then I start to get a bunch of cancellations. So which is why I'm considering saying we maybe wait a little bit longer to open the RSVP lines so that people aren't having to go on a wait list. Because once they're on the wait list, sometimes they assume that they're not going to get in, and then they make other plans. And then this week I have cancellations, and then I could have got them in. So, because they made other plans. So,
and still at the luncheon, you see that people that made reservations didn't show up, that didn't make a cancellation. Right. So,
yeah. So we take all that into account in our numbers and how many we allow out there, expecting that we're going to have a certain number of those that happen. But a lot of things, for especially as we get older, come up at the last, you know, a lot of people make doctor's appointments this week and they end up being next week Friday. So it just happens. But, you know, we want to fill the seats. We want the veterans to have an opportunity to get in those seats. And it's going to be a great luncheon next week. I just think it's going to be amazing. The Harmon girls that are part of the Bridge to History ambassadors, they're going to be there also. They're going to be singing the national anthem on top of sharing. So we'll have kids coming in from California. We've got the kids. It's going to be a really amazing thing to see how this all works, because we know that our particular group of people loves to hear from the young people.
They do.
So I think it's going to be really neat.
And then next month we have the Battling Betties are going to put on a Beer and Betties at the Old Town Ice House in Keller. This is the 2nd annual event. Last year we had a good event. They raised some money for roll call, and we just appreciate them for doing that. The 2nd annual, everything's 2nd annual. So our 2nd annual clay shoot is going to be October the 13th. There's still time to get a team signed up, and there's still opportunities for sponsors for that. So a lot of stuff going on. And we've got Al Chatwin going to go back to Guam and some other places. So we'll next week I'll put that back up. I didn't have it today. So But this has been a good podcast today. We had a great guest, and look forward to him speaking at roll call.
Yes, absolutely. We got to get him.
We do. Well, thank you all for being part of this today, and we will see you next week on